Israel Update with Gadi and Mike Duran. Hello and welcome to Tablet's Israel Update. It is now the 12th of June and it's 1 year, 8 months and 5 days since the beginning of this war. I'm Gadi in Tel Aviv, and back again is Mike Duran at the headquarters of the Hudson Institute in Washington, D.C., unless you moved it somewhere else, Mike. Hello.
No, Gadi, I'm still here at the headquarters, and I'm as sane as possible under the circumstances. How are you?
Though pinkish.
It's just to show my comfort with my masculinity.
I see. I thought that was the beginning of a transition, but now I'm satisfied that you're still you.
No, I'm 63 years old. If I transition at this age, it's a sign of an unstable character.
I see. Have you been, Mike? Did you miss us?
Yeah, there's been a yawning absence. You know, yawning. What's a tehom? No,
canyon. No, precipice.
An abyss. A yawning abyss of longing. Yawning abyss.
And you know that Carolyn is not broadcasting in recent times, and so we should have more on our hands.
We got
some of the comments mention that in Carolyn's absence and our absence together, that's not fair to our listeners, because then they have to make do with the mainstream media, which just confuses them, and we're not
and
here
other
to correct.
and other podcasts about Israel, which we will not name.
Never.
The podcast that what is it? That dare not speak its name. They're too conventional. They're too conventional.
Mike, is there any news that you would care to mention before we delve into discussions of what happened in Israel, the nuclear non-deal with Iran?
Stop giving the news here. I'm going to tell you right now what's going on here. Okay?
All right.
Number one, the International Atomic Energy Agency passed a resolution on Thursday, that's today, declaring that Iran is in non-compliance with its nuclear safeguards obligation, further ratcheting up pressure on the Islamic Republic over its controversial nuclear program. This is, of course, happening while relations with the U.S. are strained, and concerns that Israel may be striking Iran's facilities. I'll get to that in a second. Iran reacted immediately, saying it will establish a new enrichment facility and scale up uranium enrichment after the vote against it. The announcement said that the facility will be, quote, in a secure location, unquote, and that, quote, other measures are also being planned. In a second item, Gadi, 5 unnamed sources familiar with the situation told NBC News that Israel is considering launching an attack on Iran within days and without the support of the United States, which is still holding out hopes for talks. In a third item, the U.S. is moving to draw down its presence in parts of the Middle East to only essential personnel. The State Department and the Pentagon said yesterday, Wednesday. The State Department said that it ordered the departure of all non-essential personnel from the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad and authorized the departure of non-essential personnel and family members from Bahrain and Kuwait. This is, of course, amid fears that if Israel attacks Iran, Iran will retaliate against the U.S. Nonetheless, high-level talks between the United States and Iran regarding the nuclear program are still on track for Sunday. That's this coming Sunday, June 15, according to a statement from the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. And then, Gadi, in Israeli news, an opposition-backed bill to disband the Knesset and move to early elections failed this morning after ultra-Orthodox parties backed away from threats to bring down the government. You can be sure that Ben Kaspit and others are very unhappy about this. Finally, Gadi, Hamas killed at least 5 Gazans, staffers of the new humanitarian aid delivery system last night, and they may have taken others hostage. Information on the attack, which the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation said Hamas carried out against the GHF bus that was en route to distribute aid, is still sparse and the aid group said it will release more information when it can. Over to you.
Yeah, so let's start with the internal Israeli matters. Last week on Friday, 4 soldiers were killed in Gaza after entering a high-rise building, which they were supposed to clear and was booby-trapped. There was then an expose by Noam Amir, the military correspondent for Channel 14, who said that that the problem was that the Attorney General refused the Attorney General of the army refused to grant permission to bomb the building because of the danger of collateral damage, and this raised once again the festering debate about the many restrictions that our jurists are putting on Tzahal, on the IDF in this war. And this connects to a more acute debate, which was conducted in the parliament when Amit Halevi from the Likud submitted a question for the cabinet, and the person answering for the cabinet was Bezalel Smotrich, the Minister of Finance. And Smotrich, who also sits in the war cabinet, admitted that because of the restrictions of the Army Attorney General, her name is Ifat Tomer Yerushalmi, and she is we always get stuck with the ranks. She is it's Major General Ifat Tomer Yerushalmi also is forcing the army to distribute humanitarian aid outside the centers where it is now concentrated. Now this is a really big issue. And it seems like the new Army Chief of Staff is more like the old Army Chief of Staff than we like to think. Let me remind you that despite the orders from the cabinet, the old Chief of Staff, General Herzi Halevi, refused to take the humanitarian aid into the hands of the IDF and prevent Hamas from taking it over and distributed it, which enabled Hamas to continue to control the population. That is, the population was still dependent on Hamas for administration. So the plan now to finish off the war, I interviewed on our last episode Brigadier General Erez Wiener, who was responsible for planning this new operation. And one of the central pillars of this operation was to concentrate the population of Gaza in a narrow strip of the beach in the south of the strip and distribute all the aid there. It's funny, I interviewed him again in Hebrew live on stage yesterday in Jerusalem. It was Tuesday in Jerusalem. And I asked him, why is the distribution done according to his plan by American civilian companies and only secured by the IDF? And he said, well, in Israel, the whole of the brass of the army and much of the security establishment is allergic to the idea of military rule, and let alone occupation. So the only way to get this through all the various ranks of the IDF brass was to call it by another name and to bring in an American companies to distribute the food. Now this is a major.
I've never understood this. I've asked this question to a million people, never got a good answer. I think this is a key question. Why won't they go in and occupy and root out the Hamas fighters? Why?
Because of our jurists. Because now, first of all, they are putting many obstacles in any attempt to clear the population from the north to the south, and now they are forcing the army command to distribute humanitarian aid outside the perimeters.
The allergy that you mentioned in the top command is because of the jurists.
It's because of the Oslo the lingering Oslo conceptia. And this goes, the jurists are one part of it, but the reason I mentioned the jurists is that they put the actual restrictions in place, and then the rest of the army abides by them. I've had a conversation with a jurist who is who was on the critical side of the way our juristocracy is run. And he said, who is the real commander of the IDF? Well, it's Ifat Tomer Yerushalmi, because no one disobeys her, including the chief of staff. And the only things that the chief of staff can do without her approval are things that she's not interested in. When she's interested in something, her word is the final word. And it must be said, Mike, that our elected officials, including the cabinet, are still unable to force the army to do what it is told. And this has been, it's a lingering problem in Israel. Many prime ministers have encountered it, that you can't really do something that you want without convincing the military establishment. And now there seems to be a tug of war, do you say? The pulling of the rope from one side to the other between the politicians.
How do you say tug of war in Hebrew?
Meshichat chevel, the pulling of the rope. Literally. And so the reason we are not moving to full evacuation and to implementing the plan of distributing food only through American companies in the perimeters that Tzahal controls is that the Attorney General of the Army is putting obstacles in the way of implementing this policy. Then there is also pressure from two other quarters. One is the Matpash. The Matpash is an Israeli invention. It's the military authority to coordinate civil organization in administered territories, administered by the army. That is now only Judea and Samaria, but since the beginning of this war.
What does Matpash stand for?
Minhal Ti'um Peulot Bashtachim.
Okay.
The administrative headquarters for coordinating actions in the territories, and they have become representatives of the territories. So they are sabotaging the dismantling of UNRWA, because they are used to working with UNRWA, and they keep saying,
okay,
if you dismantle UNRWA.
In my opinion, this is a huge story. If everything you're saying is true.
Mike, when has anything that I said been true? I don't understand.
When has anything you said been true? That's a good question.
Never. I'm a conspirator and a disseminator of fake news. Don't you read the Hebrew press?
I do. This is we need to investigate this further. It's
absolutely.
This is where a crazy legalism. What am I looking for? Internationalism becomes military strategy and sets Israel and the United States up for failure.
This is one of the main themes of my book. And also, this is it touches on one of the main themes of our friend John Fonte's book, in which representative governments are weakened and crippled by unelected bodies, especially through the
juristocracy?
No, mishput. I'm looking for a verb.
Judiciability?
Judicialization. Judicialization of politics. And so now this has been going on. This is a major issue of the whole war. Mike, why was the perimeter, which prevented Gazans from reaching the fence, how was that eroded? In the year 2000, when Doron Almog was commander of Southern Theater, he ordered shoot to kill anyone who is 1 kilometer from the fence in Gaza. And then how does it work? With the jurists, they leave no fingerprints. There was recently a very interesting report by the Movement for Governance and Democracy, a right-wing think tank, which showed how the judiciary intervenes in security policy without leaving any fingerprints. Because what happened was that human rights organizations, it's always funny that human rights that we believe that these organizations are concerned with human rights because they keep demanding Israel withdraw from territories. Wherever we withdraw from, human rights deteriorate immediately. So they're not in support of human rights. They're just against Israel and for the Palestinians. And human rights organizations keep appealing to the Supreme Court against this policy of the parameter. And in the end, the appeals get rejected. So the jurists say, we rejected the appeals. We haven't done anything. But the real drama happens when they debate these appeals. And when they debate these appeals, they keep making demands of the military and of the government and the state, which is a party to the appeal, to change its policy so as not to force the Supreme Court to strike it down. So in the end of the process, we have people getting all the way to the fence. And I don't know if you remember, Bar El Khadaria, the soldier that approached the fence, was shot point blank from zero distance in the forehead by a Hamas operative who was standing right near the fence. And October 7 happened because we got used to them doing exercises and rallies right at the fence. So before the morning of October 7, as you remember, the Tatzpitaniyot, what do you call them?
The ladies who look in binoculars at the activities, they are spotters, I guess. Not spotters. I don't know how you say Tatzpitaniot.
Anyway, they do look with the binoculars
Spotters
at the fence.
No, I should know the word, but I can't think of it.
Anyway, they kept saying the Palestinians are at the fence, and their commanders kept saying, yes, you always
observers?
say that.
Sorry, not observers. It doesn't matter. I'm terrible at simultaneous translation.
Apparently, and so we just got used to these warnings that the Palestinians are conducting exercises right at the fence. And on October 7, when the Tatzpitaniyot again warned, on the eve of October 7, they warned that the Palestinians were at the fence. Their own commanders said, well, that happens all the time, and stop being hysterical. And they stopped being hysterical after being slaughtered tragically. So the Supreme Court and our jurists keep intervening in all these things. I remind you, Mike, that I've said repeatedly on this program that according to the dictates of the Attorney General of the Army, the same brigadier, it was not Brigadier General, it was Major General Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi, forbade the targeting of people who participated in the terror attacks of October 7 unless they were officially affiliated with Hamas, based on a ridiculous interpretation of the first protocol of the Geneva Convention, which forbids targeting civilians. So if they're not members of Hamas, they're civilians, despite the fact that they took part in an invasion of Israel and where they tortured, raped, murdered, mutilated children, and yet our dear jurists have exonerated, if not exonerated them, protected them as civilians, and so forbid us to attack them. And we must say, Mike, it's not, we can't blame everything on the jurists. We have an elected
but
government.
It feels good.
Certainly after the defeat of the reform, but we have a government that should, and we have a chief of staff which should put Mrs. Tomer Yerushalmi in her place. She cannot sabotage our drive for victory endlessly.
I'll tell you why I injected a note of slight skepticism about your analysis, which I cannot disagree with because I don't know. Yeah. But because here's what I asked myself: the cabinet has sat with the chief of staff, the chiefs of staff, and formulated together these plans. And it can't be that Herzl Levy and then I'm drawing a blank on the current chief of staff. His name is
Eyal Zamir.
Zamir. That Herzl Levy and Zamir say to the ministers, we can't do that because Ifat Tomer Yerushalmi won't let me. That doesn't make sense. So he has to have some explanation that he's giving as to why we have to do it this way rather than that way. And there's some reason why the ministers are okay with that as well. Back when it was the Biden administration, I assumed that the pressure from the Americans was the key issue. Now we don't have that anymore because Trump has basically given a green light, but they're still reluctant to go in and do it themselves, which is the safest and best way for everyone, including the Gazans, by the way. The longer this thing drags out, the more Gazans die, the more people suffer, and so on. So
well, Mike, I completely agree with you that it makes no sense, but this is reality, and we have it now also confirmed from, say, Bezalel Smotrich recently in the Knesset, where he said that according to the instructions of the Attorney General of the Army, food is distributed even outside the parameters in complete defiance of the whole plan of the war because these restrictions allegedly are a force majeure. That is, they are our interpretation of international law. So,
but in the American context, and I know that it's not it's not evidence of what's going on in Israel, but in the American context, whenever a very serious national security decision is depicted by the people making the decisions as our hands are tied, the lawyers won't let us do it, I know it's not true. I know that there's some other calculation. There's some other calculation that they don't want to express, and they prefer to hide behind the lawyers. That's my concern here.
Yeah, that is indeed the difference between America and Israel in this count. In Israel, whenever the government says I can do something, you have to not believe them because you have to remember that the real rulers of this country are jurists. So it's the complete opposite of what you describe, and this holds true for anything. Look, the prime minister cannot dismiss a head of Shabak or appoint a new one.
No,
Why?
Why? That I see.
Because the attorney.
But in the end, when Netanyahu decided he wanted to do it, I realized it was a very big decision, and not something he took lightly. But at a certain point, he brought political pressure to bear on Ronen Bar and made it and basically got rid of him. He's leaving in the next couple of days, right?
Yeah, he's supposed to be leaving in 4 days, but your description is more than slightly misleading. Ronen Bar just gave him the finger and say, "I'm not leaving until I decide to leave." And so there were appeals to the Supreme Court against that dismissal, and so the government, when Ronen Bar announces that he chose his own date of departure, the government announces that it withdraws the decision that Netanyahu passed through cabinet to dismiss him in order to not have the Supreme Court debate the issue, so as not to have a precedent in which the government is forbidden of dismissing a head of Shin Bet. But then the Supreme Court said it will debate the case nonetheless. And so in one of those surreal decisions of the Supreme Court, it is now not clear if cabinets can or cannot dismiss their head of Shabak. And Mike, this is when I now realize there was that we covered with words a disagreement between us, or we concealed with agreement underlying issues when we just assumed that American pressure was what was preventing the IDF from doing stuff. The American pressure played a very important part, but it played a part in a way that Herzi Halevi and the whole peacenik brass of the IDF had the Americans for support and for an excuse for not implementing government policy. And what Herzi, the reason we did not win the war, Mike, is that Herzi was in tune with the Attorney General in putting obstacles in the way of the policy that the government implemented. Mind you, they knew this from the start. If you remember the way Netanyahu phrased the goals of the war, then they do not include occupying the Gaza Strip. Instead, the last of the three aims of the war is making sure Gaza does not pose a threat to Israel in the future. That is a deliberately obfuscating phrasing which does not put Netanyahu on a collision course with the brass, who is, as I said, allergic to the word occupation. The word occupation appears in army orders for the first time with Israel Katz, after Gallant was removed and Herzi Halevi was removed, and then Minister Katz said that the IDF will clear and occupy swaths of the Gaza Strip in order to root out all terrorists. This policy is only partially implemented because of the army hiding behind the jurists. It is the army hiding behind the jurists, not the government.
Okay, so this makes more sense to me. Let's why is the army hiding behind the jurists? Because why is it allergic to occupation? Because it fears that Smotrich and Ben Gvir will come in behind and start demanding the creation of settlements, and then there'll be a whole that the whole Oslo conception under which they're operating will be destroyed. So
exactly.
It's a political.
Exactly, Mike. May I remind you of your interpretations, in which you said that you talked about the Biden administration, but the same goes here, that the major concern of the whole peace processor universe or ecosystem since October 7 was how to prevent this disaster from taking the two-state solution off the table.
Yeah. No, I believe that. I believe that. I just okay. I don't want to belabor it. I don't. I'm not arguing with you. I just have lots of questions. I don't understand how everyone is making their calculations. That's all. And I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to pursue it on my own. We should pursue it too. Think about other people
absolutely.
we can bring in.
Yeah,
this is a huge issue now. Now that the American.
This is the issue in Israeli politics, except the draft bill, which was just removed as a danger from collapsing the coalition. But that is the issue, and this is why the mainstream press all attacked Noam Amir when he said that the reason for the death of the soldiers who entered the building, the reason for it was the restrictions by the Attorney General.
That's such a big.
He said something local. He said something, focused on a specific incident, but it just opened the Pandora's box because the whole war is conducted with one hand tied behind our back, and this may cost us not reaching victory. I also mentioned the Matpash. I want to just finish this before moving to the next topic and say that the Matpash, this Army Authority of Coordination, what happened to it is what happened to diplomats when they serve in a country too long. They become the representative of the country that they're serving in
that often happens really quickly.
This was the permanent complaint of at least right-wing secretaries of state, beginning with Kissinger and on.
George Shultz had a shtick. He used to, when an ambassador was being appointed to a country, he had a globe in his office, and when he was having a one-on-one with the ambassador, before sending him out to Colombia or Zaire or Nicaragua, wherever, he would call him over to the map and he'd say, over to the globe, and he'd say, now point out your country. And they would say, here's Nicaragua. And he would say, no. this is your country. He reported the United States.
So exactly this is what happened to the Matpash. And then there is also the huge unit that was constructed in order to take care of the hostage issue. And that unit is considered a nest of left wing I don't want to say propagandists, but
Activists.
activists inside the army who have been leaking all the time and
The
who have
unit
been
in charge of the hostages, meaning the intelligence unit that is tracking where they
it
are.
is an intelligence unit, but they have been situated in a building in Bnei Brak. They overtook a whole office building, and they're upright. I'll just tell you a funny story about
In
this.
Bnei Brak.
In Bnei Brak, and they are, and they
Why Bnei? Sorry, I'm sorry.
I don't know. They found an office building which was just brand new, and the offices were not yet sold, and they occupied completely. I hear that they take 10 stories in this building. And if you just want to know something about their lefty Tel Avivian mentality, the army issues a card called 10 bis. Give a bite. It enables you to buy food, and a soldier is granted 32 shekels for lunch. And they complained that this is not enough in the area where their building resides, and so they get 72 shekel for their lunch. And this just gives you an idea of the whole. They are separate from the army in their own minds. And they kept complaining and they kept leaking that Netanyahu is not giving them enough concessions to make to Hamas. So this is also, so if you think that there is a chain of command in Israel, you are mistaken. There is rather a separation of the branches of the army, so to speak, the separation of the branches of the executive, in which the prime minister has to convince his subordinates to do many things.
It has always been this way, though, in the Israeli army. It has always been this way.
Yeah. The whole of Israeli politics is like this.
In the 73 war, Sharon's division was known as the Likud division. He had already retired from the military and established the Likud party, and then they brought him back, and it was so.
Yeah, and you can't say of Sharon that he did not conduct an independent policy.
But all those pictures of him, with the bandaged head and everything, it was all political propaganda. Actually,
you know how he got the wound in his forehead.
He bumped his head on a
dashboard.
gun. Yeah,
on the
I think it was a gun.
On the dashboard
I think it was it was a machine gun. That because maybe it was the dashboard. Who knows? I don't know. The dashboard is a better story.
I'm not completely positive on if it was a dashboard.
You know who helped him with that?
Who else? What?
You know who helped him with that?
No.
Ehud Olmert.
How so?
Ehud Olmert was a military reporter. A reporter inside the for
embedded in the unit.
Yeah, embedded in the Galei Tzahal or whatever. He was a I don't know what you call it, but not on the radio, but a
I think it was B'Machaneh.
And so he
the Army magazine, I think.
Yeah, the Army magazine. So he was there helping Sharon with the propaganda.
Ehud Olmert is now making the rounds. You probably saw.
Oh man,
Israel for war crimes everywhere and settler violence and whatnot.
Pathetic. Which allows me to tell you something.
But before you do, you would love this. Because Ben Kaspit had Ehud Olmert. You love Ben Kaspit. Did you see this? Ben Kaspit had Ehud Olmert.
I just hear Ben Kaspit, I start laughing. It's just like
so Ben Kaspit, you should see his ravings about me. I'll send you some of Kaspit's poetic descriptions of me. The Meturlal doctor, the wacko doctor or something. And so Ben Kaspit had Olmert on his show, and he said, why do you go bad-mouthing Israel and calling it a criminal government and on international media? And Ehud Olmert just looked him in the eye and said, I say in English exactly what you say in Hebrew. In fact, I have a quote from today, and he took out his phone and he read Ben Kaspit
And
saying exactly the same
that's
thing.
exactly true. That is the smartest thing Ehud Olmert ever said.
So I will just, since we've been talking at length about this complicated issue that we should return to, I'll just mention that there is a report by Regavim. I'm preparing a big piece about it in English, so you'll be able to read about it in tablet soon, I hope. There is now a report by the Regavim movement, which is an interesting NGO, which deals with the allocation of land in Israel, the invasion of public lands by Bedouins, the land issues in Judea and Samaria, and other things.
From a right wing
From a
perspective.
right wing perspective. In fact, it was co-founded by Bezalel Smotrich, long before he became a politician, and that report, and it now published a report. It has a brilliant Hebrew name. I'll get the English name for you. The English name is False Flags and Real Agendas, Settler Violence, in scare quotes, a Modern Blood Libel. And what they did, I won't mention the data now because we're out of time, but we'll discuss it after my piece is published. They took apart the UN database on which the whole settler violence campaign rests. The settler violence campaign funnels huge amount of European money and UN money into anti-Israel NGOs to collect and, it turns out, invent a lot of shit about settlers. And then they took it apart, and you won't believe only 10% of the data that the UN has is of any relevance, because they count as settler violence any trip a Jewish family takes to the Temple Mount. It's not in the territories. They don't have to be settlers, and there is absolutely no violence. But that's counted as settler violence in the UN database. They also count cases in which a Palestinian terrorist invades a Jewish settlement and is shot while carrying out a terror attack. That is also settler violence. So had the media been honest, this would have been an earthquake. I predict that it won't be an earthquake. But honest people should read this, because the settler violence narrative is central to the peace processor's attempt to bring back the two-state solution. At best, at worst, it blames the settlers for all trouble in the Judea and Samaria, and portrays the Palestinian as this peace-loving group of victims. And at least it tries to frame the issue in such a way that there are radicals on both sides who are the enemies of peace, and we should all get together. And never mind that there has never been a Palestinian peace movement or a Palestinian offer for peace from any politician. So let's put an asterisk here and discuss it after my piece is published.
Okay. All right.
How about Iran? Are we 7 hours from attacking Iran, as Ronen Bergman revealed in the New York Times, when back in the day when the Trump administration was still putting its foot down against an Israeli attack?
I have a friend who was in Israeli special forces back in 1991, and he came out of the experience of the U.S. Gulf War, the U.S. war in Iraq.
In January 91.
Yeah, with something like PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Although he never actually went into action. And but he was jittery for like a year or two afterwards. Why? Because you remember Saddam Hussein was shooting Scuds at Israel?
Yeah.
And so there was a Scud Hunt that the United States initiated. The U.S. and the Brits went to go find Scuds in Western Iraq. The U.S. operation to go Scud hunting to try to suppress the Scuds was a little bit of Potemkin policy. It was a fake policy. designed. Oh, the United States didn't destroy any Scuds. First of all, couldn't find them, but wasn't trying all that hard anyway.
Because it was just trying to pacify Israel.
Prevent Israel
Yeah.
from attacking, because if Israel were to attack, then according to this argument now, you're endangering American soldiers. So,
but also you're endangering the American coalition,
the
which
American
would not
coalition,
like Israel to join. The Arabs
right?
were in the coalition.
Yes, yes, but the real pressure on Israel was coming from the United States, and to ratchet up the pressure, they said, we're taking care of it, and if you interfere, you will endanger our effort. So, my friend was the Israelis responded to the Israeli military responded to this. Yitzhak Shamir responded to this by threatening every day to go launch an attack against Saddam Hussein. And so to threaten that credibly, you have to put the guys on the plane. All right. So my friend was briefed, and they were briefed that this mission you're going on is would have been the riskiest mission he ever went on, and almost a suicide mission. And so every day, literally every day or every couple of days, they were loaded on the plane to go off on this suicide mission, and then it was stood down every day. It was stood down under pressure from the Americans, because they did it, ostentatiously, so American intelligence would pick it up and then say, "Don't you dare, don't you dare." But my friend got loaded on a plane and taken off, loaded on a plane, taken off, and he believed that he was going off on a near suicide
Usarian
mission.
in Catch-22.
Yeah. I mean, really, it's insane, and it's like when people carry out, when hostage takers carry out fake executions to their hostages and so on. It's something like that. So he was very jittery for a whole year after that. And when I read the news about what's going on between Iran and Israel and the United States, this whole story comes back to me, because I wonder if it's not the same thing. I don't know. I have no information, but it's clear what's happening here. The last week or week before last, I've already lost track of the dates. Witkoff, I think weekend before last, I could be wrong though. Witkoff presented a proposal to the Iranians, which was a very generous proposal that would allow them to continue for some period of time enriching uranium, but under very, very strict supervision from the IAEA. But they could hold on for an indefinite period of time. I don't know how long that would be, to their program. They would probably have to dismantle. We don't know the details. The negotiations are being very, very tightly held. Israelis, as far as I can tell, if they know anything, they're not talking. The Americans are not talking. On the Witkoff's team is tiny. There's Witkoff. He's got a guy from the CIA who's in the room with him, who's his staffer, who's in the room with him, with Aragchi. I don't know how much Witkoff is sharing with the rest of his team. If he's sharing a lot, like Michael Anton is the guy in the State Department who's responsible for the technical side of the talks. How much Anton knows, nobody knows. Anton's not talking. So there's no information getting out. All we get is what we get from leaks from the Iranians to the international press. Very, very general statements from the Witkoff team and Marco Rubio, etc. And then a little bit of information comes from the Europeans, who get briefed not very well by the American team. So we're kind of reading tea leaves, but it's clear the Americans gave some kind of proposal that allows Iran to continue for probably a couple of years at least, enriching uranium. And the idea apparently is to set up a consortium on an island in the Persian Gulf where uranium will be enriched and then can be used by all the Persian Gulf states, not just Iran. That's apparently what's going on. Anyway, the
So
Iranians
why
are
do we hear that Trump is far less optimistic about the prospects of a deal now?
because the Iranians don't seem to be biting. They don't seem to be taking this. The Iranian statements suggest that they are not interested in this. And you saw in the news that I read to you at the top of the hour here that 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 the IAEA says Iran is moving forward, and the IAEA is unhappy. And Iran responded to that by saying, we're going to build another secure enrichment facility. So the Iranians are pressuring the Americans by advancing their nuclear program, and number two, threatening to attack American military facilities. And we should not minimize the we should not
Danger.
the danger or the effectiveness of that threat. Gadi, remember that the U.S. cut a separate deal with the Houthis just before Donald Trump went to the Gulf, and that was because, among other things, among other reasons, the U.S. military failed to deliver the goods in the conflict with the Houthis. They and the Houthis were a more formidable enemy than the Americans expected. And there's disappointment in the political echelon in the White House with the performance of the military against the Houthis. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because I guarantee you that basically my understanding is the military promised Trump that if they were given X, Y, and Z, they could go in and destroy the Houthis and take care of the problem. They were given X, Y, and Z, said, okay, have at it, boys. And they didn't deliver the goods. So there's disappointment in the White House about the effectiveness of the military. And that, in my opinion, is very likely to influence Trump's attitude toward whatever the military is telling him about Iran. If they say, don't worry, sir, don't worry about these threats, we can take care of it, we've got it, we can handle it. So that's going to make Trump a little bit, I think, uneasy about saying, yeah, go ahead, attack. But he had a conversation this week with Netanyahu, and Netanyahu undoubtedly said, the Iranians are stringing you along. They're playing you for a sucker. We got to take care of this, and we'll go alone. We'll go alone. And that's where we get to my friend being put on the plane. We'll go alone. We'll go. I don't think Netanyahu wants to go alone. No Israeli prime minister would want to go alone, because the Iranians are going to hit Israel with hundreds of ballistic missiles, and they're going to hit Israel with hundreds of ballistic missiles. They're threatening to hit American bases. They're also threatening to hit Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So if Israel goes alone, it doesn't go alone. It does drag the United States automatically into this conflict. Israel needs the United States to help it defend against the ballistic missiles, and America's other allies and America itself has to defend itself against those ballistic missiles.
Do you remember that we wrote a piece together for Haaretz a long time ago, which said Israel should say to the Americans, give us the tools and we'll finish the job?
Yeah, that's what it should say, but I'm not sure it can.
So this is designed, as was this is why we alluded to Churchill, to counter the kind of isolationist arguments which say that an ally is dragging America into a war in which it has no direct interest. So I saw a statement by Tom Cotton yesterday, by Senator Tom Cotton, that said that now that the Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, says that Iran is probably moving to the construction of a nuclear weapon, the danger is not just to Israel but to American interests as well. How widespread is that opinion?
Well, I would think that that in military circles, and you know, anyone who has a sane understanding of the intersection of interests between China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, and the intersection of interest between the United States and Israel. Anyone who understands that sees that this is a threat to the United States. But there's a, you know, there's a ongoing debate inside the administration about how whether Israeli interests and American interests are really identical, about whether the Russians can be detached from the Chinese, and so on. So there's a lot of there isn't inside the administration, there isn't a clear strategic view about all of this. What Donald Trump thinks exactly, who knows? We don't know. But inside his administration, there isn't a strategic vision has not coalesced. The this administration is more, I think, in talking about in terms of the people who populate the bureaucracies, more disaffected from Israel than any Republican administration in recent memory.
That's that's a very grim assessment.
No, 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 no. We're talking about the bureaucracy, the bureaucrats, and that matters. But the American electorate is pro-Israel.
Yeah, but now, you know, the Democrat Party is clearly taking the anti-Israel side, and now we've got the woke right, which is anti-Semitic too, and with the through the isolationist wing is very influential now. And then you have the center of it all, Donald Trump, who seems to be willing to leave Israel in the lurch in many respects.
Well, you know, I wrote a book about Eisenhower, whom I love, and
Do you love the
Eisenhower's.
book or Eisenhower?
Oh, I love the Eisenhower. The book is
It's terrible,
okay.
terrible.
It's okay, but
Yeah,
it doesn't match my
There's
love.
a Hebrew translation.
There is a Hebrew
So here,
translation.
and who initiated the Israeli translation, Mike? Do you remember?
Did you have something
It
to do with
was
it?
my idea. Yeah.
Was it really?
I sold it to the publisher. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, I totally
And it's on
forgot
the
that.
subscription
Did
library.
I know? Did I know that?
I don't know if you knew that, but now you
I
do.
owe you. I owe you a debt of gratitude. I did not
No,
know that.
I already took your what do you say? לקחתי את ה quid pro quo from you, and you didn't know because I had my subscription plan on my Hebrew podcast. I gave them a
Yeah.
free copy of your book. So so a lot of your royalties will never arrive, Mike, because about
My
500
royalties.
copies were distributed courtesy of the publisher to my subscribers. Did you know that?
You know, the royalties I got were very small, but it allowed me to put on my tax return where it says profession, I put author, and that gives me like it makes me feel good. You know, it's like saying I don't know, just one of it's one of those
That's
things.
usually not a very useful thing on tax return because what do you count as expenses?
No, it doesn't
Stationery.
matter. It's my ego, man. It's my ego.
Yeah.
It's
Ego
like
is a difficult thing.
it's like buying.
So
I buy lottery tickets. You know,
yeah, I know.
I have no hope that I'm going to actually win the lottery. But if you don't pay if you don't pay the $3, you can't have the fantasy. So
Yeah, yeah. So my general impressions were I was 2 weeks ago, last time we talked, I think, I was really
so-
depressed.
sorry, I never finished let me just finish
Uh,
the thing. So
Eisenhower.
Eisenhower, the whole administration was hostile to Israel. Absolutely, and it all worked out
But
because because America is a pro-Israel country, so these bureaucrats can only hold things. They can only and there's the logic too. There's the logic of the international system. They can Tucker Carlson can pretend all he wants, or can try to convince himself with Jeffrey Sachs that Iran just wants peace, right? But ultimately, the Iranians never never show that peace-loving side that people like Tucker Carlson know is there. They never show it. So
Yeah.
you can always bank on them to blow it.
But 3 weeks ago, when we last had a joint episode, I was very, very pessimistic
Yes, you
about
were.
what was happening with the American administration, and I'm less pessimistic now, and that may be groundless, but I'll tell you what the logic is. I felt that Trump, who's not a very patient man, has lost his patience with Israel. He said, "Win
Uh,
this war, take all you need, all the ammunition you need, and just do it." And Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi does not allow. I at one point in a studio in Israel on television, I suggested direct negotiations between Yifat and Trump. That would this would be a summit to settle all the issues. But then Trump lost his patience with Israel and left us in the lurch, and we saw almost a fuck you with the Houthis, where he said, "Just leave the international shipping alone, and we'll leave you." And basically said, "You can do whatever you want to Israel; it's their business." And now I'm getting the feeling that he's losing his patience for the other side.
yeah.
So maybe our basis for optimism is that.
I trust him. I trust him in this sense. Look, Mike Huckabee is his ambassador to Israel for a reason. And of course he likes Sarah Huckabee a lot, but that's not the reason. The reason is he's a very good politician, Donald Trump. He's a very, very good politician and very savvy guy about these things. And he understands that the evangelical Christians are very important for his, and very important part of his base. And not just them, that America is pro-Israel, America is anti-Iran. I don't know if I told you, I worked for Scott Walker in the 2016 election, and I fought very hard to have in his and when he announced his candidacy, his first campaign speech, uh, we had a he had this refrain in the speech: "On day one, I will do X. On day one, I will do Y." And we had a big debate on the team about whether what foreign policy items should be on day one. And I argued strenuously that it should say, "On day one, I will rip up the Iran nuclear deal, Obama's Iran nuclear deal." And it's kind of an interesting story, but I'll make it short. It was very controversial, this question, for a bunch of reasons. But in the end, Walker decided that that was going to be in his speech. And I was out there in Milwaukee for the speech on the floor of the rally, or what do you call it, the convention? No, what do you anyway? I can't think of the right word. I can't speak English. Anyway, I was on the floor, and I got all the farmers in overalls, and basically your average Wisconsin Republican voter, and and he said, "On day one, I will rip up the Iran nuclear deal." And it got the biggest applause of anything he said in the speech. Anything. And I was amazed. I mean, I was so happy to have it in there, but I was only thinking about, I'm not a domestic politics guy, I'm a foreign policy guy. I didn't know that it was actually really good domestic politics. And this is another thing I learned, and I understand Trump better from watching him do all these rallies. You can't fake this kind of thing. Like it gives you, this is real intel about what people care about. Because when you hear an applause like that, you know that this is really enthusiastic and heartfelt, and emotional. So Trump, when he goes out to all these rallies, he's getting a lot of information about what the average person cares about, which is very different than reading Twitter. There's this very online right, represented by people like Tucker Carlson and Jeffrey Sachs and so on. And this I want to say, it has nothing to do with what's going on in the country. It does have something to do, for sure, and it has influence and so on, but it is not the country. It's not the country. And Donald Trump is aware of what's going on in the country.
Was it always like this with isolationism? Because my sense is that America first in the World War II sense, the pre-entrance, the pre-Pearl Harbor, America was actually a common sentiment.
No, yeah, this is what the isolationism was a
Yeah,
common sentiment. Yeah, it was much, especially on the right, leading up to Pearl Harbor put an end to it, and then it came back a little bit right at the end of the war. Truman had to. Um, it was
dismantle the army.
yeah, and it was hard for him to ramp up for the conflict with the Soviet Union because everybody felt that the war was over after World War II. So we're in an then and then there was during the it receded during the Cold War, but it's back now. And these guys, the Tucker Carlson types, are trying they're grabbing a hold of that sentiment and trying to take it in a certain direction. They're going to fail in the end. They're going to fail. The question is, how much damage will they do before they fail? But they will fail because their ideas are out of sync with Donald. Number one, he doesn't even. I don't. He's surrounded himself by these people. Unfortunately, he's done a disservice, or his staff has done a disservice to him by having so many of them, so that he's not getting a variety of points of view, as wide a variety of point of view as he should from his staff. But he's on the phone all the time talking to. Trump talks to people. He has like 30 phone calls a day, just calling up people on the cell phone. So I don't want to say he's isolated, but on his staff, he doesn't have the range of views that I think he should have. But also they're wrong on Russia, China, Iran. They're wrong. They're not and Russia, China, Iran are, as we can see, they thought, and I think Trump to a certain degree probably thought this as well, that his big election, meant that he was going to be able to mediate an end to the Ukraine-Russia war, and he was going to be able to mediate an end to the Israel-Iran war. And it's that neither the Russians nor the Iranians are as eager to help him as he seems to have assumed that they would be.
Mike, we're out of time, so we have to go to the viewers' favorite segment, which is the dumbest take on the news,
Okay, the
as
dumbest
you well
take.
know. And then we'll read the readers' comments.
My dumb mistake was just I just went, I went to the well, right? Whenever I didn't have a lot of time before we started, and I ran to Ben Kaspit, and he was all I could see was, Ben Kaspit talking about the Haredim and the ultra Orthodox and the draft, and that bored me. So then I went to Tucker Carlson, didn't find anything there. So I went to Tom Friedman. Then there's Tom,
Oh, it's been a while since we last.
yeah, and Tom Friedman's he's really lost it, I think. I just went to his latest column, which is titled "This Israeli Government is a Danger to Jews Everywhere."
Oh.
So, because Benjamin Netanyahu is not taking Ben Caspit's advice and ending the war now, and letting Hamas live to fight another day, because of that, he is uh, he is generating all of the anti-Semitism. This may be a slight. This is basically what Friedman is saying: is he's blaming Netanyahu for the wave of anti-Semitism that's sweeping
But
the
that is the
world.
whole of the liberal left in America, their whole motivation for siding with the extreme peace processors is that stop causing trouble here because
Yeah,
you are putting us in a difficult position by insisting on your independence. And so many of them have become, I've used very, very harsh phrases to describe people like J Street. I'm actually advocating here to disallow anyone associated with J Street to enter Israel. I think we should put them on the list along with the BDSers and just
yeah.
not let them in. We never do this. You know why? Because when push comes to shove, there are always the jurists. and they will allow them. But at least we should close down the J Streets. I'm not talking about Palestine, Jewish Voice for Peace. They are even worse. But J Street is an adversary of Israel. It called for a weapons embargo on Israel in the midst of a war. And therefore, if we had balls, we would just shut down their office here and send them looking for their friends in The Hague or somewhere else. In exile. So, Mike, my dumb mistake is it's actually more funny and less in our line of politics. Naftali Bennett, you remember Naftali Bennett? He was a prime minister.
Yeah.
And
he just sorry to interrupt you. I know that our people who comment on the videos will take me to task for interrupting you. The Naftali Bennett is the great hope now of everyone who wants to topple Netanyahu. Every other poll that I read in the Israeli press is about how a government led by Naftali Bennett will destroy Netanyahu in the elections.
Yeah,
and they got so excited last week when the ultra-Orthodox were threatening to bring down the government. They were people like Ben Kaspit were really salivating over all this.
Look, this is a classic miscalculation of the Tony Blinken kind that we discussed here endlessly, and they're attempting to promote someone against Netanyahu. Naftali Bennett was now promoted by the editor of Haaretz. What better clue can you have for Naftali Bennett not getting any votes from the right than being promoted by the anti-Israeli newspaper of the post-Zionist elites? So there are polls, even the polls of Channel 12, which I don't trust. They lie about everything. Why wouldn't they lie about the polls? And we even know what way they lie. Even their polls said that of the 20-something seats in parliament that Naftali Bennett is getting, only 16% of his votes come from the right. So the trick that he did when he stole people's votes, basically, he committed on national TV, Channel 20, he signed a sheet of paper on live TV saying, I will never sit in a government with Yair Lapid. And then he went ahead and did it because he could prevent Netanyahu from creating a government, which he actively did. And then he actively took his 7 seats. One did not follow him. Rightly, Amichai Shikli did not follow him, but he took 6 seats and became prime minister because he had the position of extorting whatever he wants from the left-wing bloc, which could only rely on cheats like him and the anti-Zionist Arab parties. So anyway, he committed the most gigantic fraud in Israel, in Israeli electoral history, and I know now from sources inside, people who didn't follow him, he said, the mud will sink. Eventually, the mud will sink and people will forget. I didn't forget. I keep tweeting whenever I encounter him. My phone knows how to complete this sentence alone. Mike, I'll say it in Hebrew. You translate. Bnei tarbut maki'im mikirbam nochlim misugo shel Naftali Bennett. How would you translate that?
Okay. Cultured people...
Civilized people
vomit.
Yeah, no, the Hebrew expression is metaphorical, but yeah, they expel. But Mikiim is vomiting, but it's also a metaphor for Mikirbam, from their midst.
From their midst. Okay, so they expel from their midst
conmen like Naftali Bennett. And so this is good enough introduction for my dumbest take on the news. It's a tweet by Naftali Bennett. And the tweet is a picture of a watch. And it says, someone forgot in our house on the kitchen table a watch sometime during the last month. We tried to understand who it was, but we couldn't. It looks like an expensive watch, but I don't understand. But I'm not an expert on these things. The owner of the watch can DM me or Galit in private. So Naftali Bennett is pretending to be honest on Twitter by returning a watch. You stole an election. And so immediately someone retweeted that and said, how about first returning all the money that the parties you dismantled owe the state of Israel before you return watches?
A friend of mine's, I'm trying to decide if I should tell this story or not. I have a story. A friend, a friend of mine's, so, uh, brother. I better not tell this story. I better.
No, Mike.
No,
After this introduction, conceal all private details.
I'll try. I feel like I've already said too much anyway. So anyway, there was an event. There was a media event at Naftali Bennett's house in Ra'anana, and and an interview, and the media team went in to interview him, and in his house there was some dog shit on the floor, and and they everyone just ignored it, and they did the interview. And the guy said it really stuck in his head. He thought it was the strangest thing in the world that that nobody did anything about the dog shit.
Are you sure there wasn't a tweet? Some dog forgot his shit on our carpet. If we couldn't figure out which dog it was, but please DM us if you know the dog.
Oh.
Clean it. Mike, what are the viewers and listeners' comments that you want to?
I just broke one of my rules.
Rules
the funny, by the way, you know how Netanyahu is always serious, right? You know, he's always serious. I've only seen him. I'm talking about when he's in public, right?
In public, yeah.
I've only seen him crack up once, and he didn't totally crack up. But he couldn't hold it back. You remember that Naftali Bennett, when he became prime minister, he made a big show of saving the people money by moving the prime minister's house to Ra'anana, to his home.
Oh right? Yeah, that was a waste of huge sums of money.
But the idea was I'm not keeping this very expensive public home. I'm just gonna work from my house in Ra'anana.
That was not the take because it was clear that it's an expense because they had to construct all the security.
Oh no, yeah,
it was a huge expense.
But what was the?
And I think what he said was what he said was the Obama excuse. I don't want to take my kids out of school in Ra'anana.
Anyway, there was a moment when a reporter was walking along with Netanyahu and they were talking about the election, and they said, Mar Netanyahu, if you win the election, are you going to move your official residence to Ra'anana? And Netanyahu couldn't suppress a laugh from that. I thought it was funny. Anyway, okay.
Yeah, comments.
I only have one here. I know we got to go, and I chose one that is good for me. Gadi. First of all,
always do.
we had an amazing number of comments, the most we've ever had, over 500, and this is a good time to ask everybody to subscribe, leave a comment, like us. What else do we want them to do? But subscribe. We're nearly up to 10,000 subscribers. We have 9,700 or something. Come on. Subscribe. You know who you are.
Why don't we start giving your books out to subscribers in English too?
Because then I have to mail it.
Yeah.
So I have an idea though for swag. I have an idea. I'll get back to you on that. I guess we could ask them send a self-addressed envelope. But I don't have. Oh, I do have some books. I have some books. The first person to send me a self-addressed stamped envelope will receive a free book. The first person. Okay. This is from Daniel Aronoff, 6921. He said, I would like Mike to comment on whether Israel and Turkey have a common interest in dismantling Iran's nuclear capabilities, and if so, whether there is any possibility that they might collaborate, overtly or tacitly, to act on that in the case that the U.S. fails to do so. I think this is a really interesting question. And my simple answer is no, they will not cooperate on this. The Turks do not feel as threatened by the Iranian nuclear program as others do. The most stable, quiet border that the Iranians have with anyone is with the Turks. You know, the Iranians cause trouble across their borders with everyone except with the Turks. They do sometimes a little bit with the Turks too, but not like they do with others. Also the Azerbaijanis, they have a stable border with the Azerbaijanis. The border with the Turks has been the same border for 500 years. And the bottom line here, this is a very interesting question. I would love to go into it more deeply. The Iranians are, I think the official or the technical political science term is that the Iranians are scared shitless of the Turks. Shitless is maybe a little bit too, is a bit of an exaggeration, but 1/3 of all Iranians are Azerbaijani Turks. So if the Turks want to, they can reach into Iranian society and shake it in a way that no one else can. And the great evidence of this was after the Azerbaijani-Armenian War in 2020. Erdogan went to Baku and for a celebration of the victory, and he read a poem from the podium, just a poem, in which this is one of my favorite episodes in recent international relations of the Middle East. He read a poem which is a Turkic lament about how the Aras River, which is the river that separates the Azerbaijanis from Iran, the Azerbaijanis of Azerbaijan from the Azerbaijanis of northeastern Iran. It's just a lament that, oh, you know, the Aras River has divided us. It caused a major, you can look it up, it caused a major diplomatic row between Ankara and Tehran. Deputies in the Majlis in Tehran read protest speeches all day long, and then the Zarif, who was the foreign minister of Iran, went and lodged a formal protest in Tehran, in Ankara, and so on and so forth. And all he did was read a poem. Think about this now: when the United States does things like Trump signed these executive orders to return to maximum pressure. They haven't really totally returned to maximum pressure, but okay, the orders are there to start putting restrictions on Iranian oil sales. Remember, they really damaged the Iranian economy back when Trump had maximum pressure before in the first Trump administration, and the Iranians just behave like this is nothing to us. You know, they brush it off their shoulder. The Americans make a lot of noise, but we live on jihad and oxygen. We don't actually need to have an economy. We don't care. But then Erdogan read a poem and they cried like little girls and just kept crying and crying and crying. So they're very good in general, the Iranians, of never ever admitting any weakness, even when they feel they right now are feeling very vulnerable to an Israeli attack. For sure, but they will deny it. No. But when it comes to the Turks, they actually show their weakness. The Turks know this. They know this, and they don't want to. They prefer to just not rock the boat. I suspect, and I can never prove this. No Turk has ever said it to me. In fact, they've always said the opposite. I suspect that on some level, the Turks would almost kind of like it if the Iranians got a nuclear weapon, because it would justify them getting one. Mm-hmm. Now, if this is me talking, right? This is only me talking. If you talk to Turks about this, they say, no. This is the whole point of NATO. We have the NATO nuclear umbrella. We don't need one. We don't want one. Just a lot of hassle and so on. But, you know, nuclear programs are kind of like they're kind of like national airlines. You kind of have to have one for pride reasons. And if the Persians get one, then the Turks may have to get one. I think, but that again, that is just me talking, not the Turks.
Yeah, but
So
that's the danger of one of the dangers of the nuclear program of Iran that it
it's
would
one of the
create,
big it's one of the big dangers from
it
the from
would
an
create
American point of view.
a nuclear arms race, and there is a lot of money in this region and a lot of fanatics.
Proliferation should be a number one concern of the United States. This is um, let me add one more thing to this. The Turks really don't like, and this is visceral and heartfelt and sincere. They really don't like the American regime change policies of the last 20 years, 25 years, whatever. They really, really, really don't like them. And they they look at the region before the United States started calling for regimes to go, and the region afterwards, and they don't think that the world, they've got 6 million. They don't admit 6 million. They say 3 million, but they've got 6 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. They don't want millions of refugees from. They don't know what's going to happen in Iran. The regime is in a precarious position. They don't want to destabilize it. They want a quiet life in the region so they can go make money. That's what they really want.
Okay, so you've hijacked the readers' comments to provide us with one more serious segment of foreign policy analysis, Mike. We will just put this down on your list of many, on the list of your many sins.
I thought
And
you were going to say that I hijacked readers' comments in order to put forward more propaganda about Turkey.
that I leave that for the next readers' comments to point out, which they often do. There
Oh,
are
they
many
do. They
jokes.
do. They do. They do.
There are
They
many
do.
jokes about you and Turkey, Mike.
Me and Qatar, me and Turkey. Yeah.
No, Qatar, you've lost the priority in the Qatar business to Netanyahu's staffers. So, on that happy note, we are done for today, and hopefully we will see you next week. Shall we then?
Bye.
Mike, for the audio listeners, say
Oh,
what you
oh,
just did.
oh, bye, 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 bye. We
He raised
appreciate
his
you.
hand saying bye bye. So,
We appreciate that wasn't good radio. Yes, we appreciate you tuning in. Like us, subscribe to us, leave a comment
oh, and
of
by the
any.
way, press the bell button so you get a notification with every
Oh,
new episode that comes out. And we will see you next week. Thank you.
and remain as sane as possible under the circumstances.